What villain actually kind of had a good reason for doing what they did? Mr. Freeze. He is just looking to find a cure for his wife. Literally all his capers are to either get revenge on the people who made him what he is or to make money for the expensive chemicals and equipment he needs to keep his wife alive in cryostasis. So yeah. Dr. Heinz Doofenshmirtz. Almost all villains in Legend of Korra have a motivation that completely makes sense. But they take it too far and become evil about it. Edit. Not Legends of Korra Mayo. All the villains in Locke were really interesting and way more fleshed out than Firelord Oze. Zahir was my favorite, but the whole last arc with Kuvira raised a lot of political philosophical questions for me. Like, is a ruthless military dictatorship better or worse for the people than a corrupt puppet monarchy? Ormin Aquaman. Dude was just mad about pollution. It's pretty hard to get around the fact that his entire advanced society has been actively hiding its existence from humanity. That's a 1-2 punch. Humanity lacked the knowledge to form the relevant mens rea. And then also Orm is just being a petty but that piece of shit when he could underwater scenes to magic the pollution problem away instead. The Grinch. As an adult, I really feel for him. I mean, he was bullied and he just hates people and materialism. But ultimately gets sucked in and brainwashed like the rest of us. Magneto. In real life. Possibly Wojciech Jaruzelski. The last communist dictator of Poland. He'd been in a Soviet forced labor camp during WWII and was dreadfully afraid of the Soviets intervening in his country if they overthrew the communist government. Jaruzelski though was trained by Soviets and was an agent of Soviets military intelligence. He also asked for Soviet military intervention to help him with Solidarity movement. That man is very controversial. Megamind. He was only a villain because he believed it was something he felt he had to do. When deep down he wasn't happy with living that life unless someone was there to stop him. Metro Man. That's why the relationship he built with Roxanne, while in his burner disguise, is so important to his story. The romance he forms with her allows him to realize he can do more with his life than just being a villain. Him and Metro Man had the same internal conflict. They only became what everyone else wanted them to be rather than choosing their own destiny. Gerard Butler's character deserved to win in Law-Abiding Citizen. Everyone always says this, but the dude went nuts. He started killing people who didn't do anything wrong just because they were part of the legal system. He absolutely did not deserve to win. I'm not saying Fox's character deserved to win either. They both ended up sucking ass. General Hummel, Ed Harris, in The Rock. Director. Be advised. 81. I repeat. 81 civilians are under my control as of now. Director, you must make sure the following information is and remains a classified fact. MR. Director. You have a serious problem. A battery of VX missiles has been deployed to deliver a highly lethal strike onto the population of the San Francisco Bay Area. I will call again at 01:00 hours to state my demands. Hummel from Alcatraz. Out. The Vulture in Spider-Man Homecoming. I empathize the most with this version of the Vulture. He got royally FK'd by the government, and when he had an opportunity to straighten things out, he was undermined by an incompetent employee who forced his hand into the wrong side. I'm Team Vulture on this one. FCK the Gova. Dracula from Castlevania the Netflix show. Ignorant god-worshipping men who were afraid of knowledge burned his wife at the stake. Wanted to live like the mortals but instead had the only part of his humanity murdered. I actually stopped watching the series like 3 episodes, and because I knew I was going to be on Dracula's side for the whole show and not enjoy the outcome. The principal in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Ferris was a pain in the ass. Skipped school and lied. Maybe he was a little over the top, but I don't blame him really. When I watched The Joker, I felt so bad for him. All that pain and he couldn't even get the right resources and help because he was from the lower class. The talk show host made fun of him and only invited him to make more fun of him. So cruel. We see this in our real society. I love that they actually focused on Arthur trying to get the help that he needs. Usually the Joker is just an asshole who does what he does for shits and giggles, but here he actually just wanted to be a good person. Well, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil. This one gets brought up a lot, and the more you think about it, especially after watching Clone Wars, the more you realize they really are kind of dicks. They create an environment where Anakin is afraid to mention his problems and where there cannot be any questioning of their methods. Fake killing Obi-Wan and not telling Anakin right away was super hurtful too, as only Anakin's genuine reaction was important. There's also the whole orchestrated war thing, based on the reaction to Mandalore. They also probably leave a lot of planets under control of enemies just because they aren't separatists. Pain from Naruto. That dude suffered for his entire life until he put his powers to use and established rule in the Hidden Rain village. A village in which he could see and hear everything. His belief was that if everybody knows all of the feelings that encompass pain, it would bring about a mutual understanding amongst people. And the worst part is that he isn't entirely wrong. Despite how deeply flawed of an outlook it is, my man was just done really dirty is all. Not really the villain, but Sharpay from High School Musical. Poor girl had been involved in musicals and drama her whole life. But suddenly, the basketballer she has a crush on and a random nerdy girl take over the main casting? It's ridiculous. No wonder she lashes out all the time. Of course she's jealous. Sharpay was the real victim in those movies. The EPA agent in Ghostbusters. This man has no dick. Double quote. Yes. Well, this trio has unregistered, unregulated nuclear devices that are being housed in the middle of the city in a former firehouse. The only thing between Manhattan becoming America's Chernobyl and a few million suffering radiation poisoning is them assuring us they are good scientists. The three guys fired from their previous university post for gross incompetence. Double quote. Dude had a really good point. N from Pokemon. I wouldn't say N is a villain. He is technically the leader of Team Plasma, but he is just a puppet king. He is never part of them doing evil shit, and once he finds out what Team Plasma is all about he goes against them. How is he a villain? Jareth from Labyrinth. Sarah asked him to take the kid. After all. Well, from a human perspective, kidnapping a child just because you overheard their sibling ask for it in frustration is pretty messed up. Sarah doesn't have any kind of authority to be giving away a child. Even her brother. Jareth, however, is a fake creature who understands absolutely none of this, so his intent wasn't necessarily malicious. But maybe he shouldn't interact with humans if he has so much trouble relating to them and can't foresee the consequences to his actions. Does anyone else think Satan got a raw deal? He was the lead in Heaven's Choir and then he got booted out of heaven with his homies. Maybe he's just a disgruntled employee who wanted a more robust employee recognition program. He was purposely created just to fall and be evil, like Jesus was created to die and rise up. The Morning Star never had a chance. Even after becoming evil and falling, all he really wanted was for people to be themselves and not be ashamed. Ozymandias, at least in the graphic novel, haven't seen the show, is definitely chaotic good. The dinosaurs in the initial Jurassic Park movies. It's not their fault they were brought back from extinction and needed some meat to eat to defend themselves. They're just trying to live their best lives too. Pinky and the Brain. There was an episode of Animaniacs. Can't remember which one or what characters were in it. But they travel to the future and it's a utopia. Turns out the future is one in which they finally managed to take over the world. Apparently, whilst they may be pretty awful in trying to take over the world, Brain has a good plan for what he intends to do once he's in control. The Mule. He was just trying to restore order to the galaxy ahead of schedule. The Selden plan was falling apart anyway. The main problem with the Mule is that his kingdom would have only lasted as long as he would live. The main problem with a lot of dictatorships. Jaime Lannister. Kingslayer. He saved the lives of millions by breaking his oath. Ganondorf. His people were made to live in a vast desert, with little resources. Meanwhile the Hylians live in fertile lands, monopolizing the use of the Triforce. I mean, this dude poisons the Great Deku Tree, covers the world in darkness for 7 years, creates a specter that probably kills Saria and terrorizes the Kokiri and then banishes it to the gap between dimensions, resurrects a dragon and has Gorons fed to it, leading to the death of their king, freezes the Zoras, etc. Guy was kinda a huge dick. He did play the organ like a badass though. Miranda Emily from The Devil Wears Prada. Imagine having to work with an arrogant person who practically spits in your face because they think they're too good for something you see as your passion. Miranda gave Andy a job that millions of people would die for, only for her to complain about it. Could they have handled it a little better? Yeah. But they were completely valid. In my opinion, the friend's boyfriend should have been labeled as the villains. They got benefits from Andy's job, but the second she needed to do it, they complained and even made fun of her. They were so unsupportive of her because it didn't fit their personal agenda. Zuko and Azula. They're both just trying to earn their father's affection. Azula is actually sadder because she never had an Uncle Iroh or support groups. And she lost her mind because of her abusive father. Zuko didn't, given Zuko had a scar by the same abusive dad, but still. Close bracket. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. If you are versed in Star Wars, EU or Legends, then Emperor Palpatine knew of an imminent invasion and did everything he could to strengthen for it. Technically, they could still do this. The rebooted Thrawn books explore the unknown regions and the threats there. That's not the main plot, but the main reason the Emperor accepts Thrawn into the Empire in the first place is to learn about the unknown regions. Thrawn's timeline is different from the EU. He is part of the Empire during the Rebels timeline, but that threat still exists in the Disney canon. Dr. Callahan from Big Hero 6. He was essentially driven mad by the loss of his daughter, and wanted revenge on the man whose carelessness had led to that loss. The equivalent for Cray was his company, so Callahan would stop at nothing to destroy it, even if a few lives were inadvertently taken in the process. Like Tadashi's. You took everything from me. Now, I'm going to take everything from you. Syndrome from The Incredibles. All he wanted to do was help, but Mr. Incredible wouldn't let him. So he turned evil and tried to make Monster to defeat just to show the world he could also be a hero. I mean, sure, but Mr. Incredible didn't let him help fight crime against the explosives expert mime cause Buddy was like, what? 12 and threw himself right into the mix. I feel like if Buddy went to Mr. and was like, hey, I'm a super genius who built these rocket boots, teach me to be a hero, he would have had better luck. Darth Vader. The Jedi manipulated hundreds of families into giving up their children. All of those children never got the chance to live a loving life with their families and probably never saw them again. In the end, it was really the Rebel Alliance, a group of non-Force using people, who ended up getting the information needed to crush the Empire and acted upon it. Arguably the Empire could have been handled without the Jedi, and at the end of TROS it was arguably the massive fleet of non-Force users that overcame the First Order's fleet. At which point they could have just done an orbital bombardment on Palpatine's decrepit old self. The Jedi and Force users were instrumental, but were they necessary for that victory? Johnny in Karate Kid. Literally didn't start a fight. He got into a normal argument with his girlfriend and that was license for edit. F King Daniel LaRusso to bully him. And after the bully wouldn't stop and Johnny, who had a history of being bullied, stood up for himself, Daniel's thuggish building maintenance man bailed him out, including doxing Johnny and them following him to the karate championships. Edit. Jason, Daniel. Nerds. Killmonger. I feel his execution was off. And genocide isn't the answer, but his reason was good. He witnessed and experienced suffering and oppression of his people, knowing there was a solution but no one wanted to do anything about it. Al from Toy Story 2. Picture yourself in his shoes. Sure, he owns a toy store, but that comes at the price of making a fool of himself on TV on a daily basis. Most people just know him as Haha Funny Chicken Man. Secretly, he has a nerdy passion. He's collected nearly all Woody's Roundup merch in existence. His collection has even attracted the attention of the Japanese Children's Museum. After years of collecting, he could finally get recognition and a sense of validation for his nerdy hobby. And all he has to do is steal one mint condition Woody doll. Well, you see, Moshe is really just misunderstood and has perfectly good reasons for doing what he did. He and Callahan are really two sides of the same coin. And Cal could have easily ending up spiteful and hateful just like Moshe. We really shouldn't be so hard on. Haha JK. FCK Moshe. Magneto and Lex Luthor are the two biggest ones in my opinion. All Magneto wanted was for mutants to be treated fairly. When waging war didn't work, he built a safe haven for mutants. All Lex Luthor wanted to do was keep his planet safe from an all-powerful alien that could easily kill everyone in the country in less than a day. Michael Douglas' character in Falling Down. Engineer. Worked his ass off for a missile company just to be laid off. Lost his family over that and had to keep up the charade for his sick mom. Perfectly understandable that he snaps one day and pays back some of the enemies. Don't know if this was said, but Darth Vader. All he ever wanted was to keep the ones he loved alive. And it was in this weakened state that he was manipulated by Palpatine. Red Hood from Batman. He kept his rules straight. Took control of the local gangs. Made sure the kids were protected. Why shouldn't he kill villains? They keep escaping. Killing more people. So it's better just to end them right then and there. My dad won't watch X-Men with me anymore because I'm pretty firmly Team Magneto. I cannot think of a more valid reason to become a villain at the first sign of making people identify themselves register as mutants. Grindelwald is probably the best example of this. He wanted a better world for wizards and humans where they could coexist as equals, but his methods were incredibly dark and sinister. Viceroy Gunray and the other Trade Federation leaders. For that matter, I, too, would be upset if the Republic started imposing themselves on my planet and creating hell for us. They just wanted to live in peace. Light Yagami. Sad thing is he ended up becoming what he hated. I mean, right after episode 1 he kills someone just because that person is saying that Light is evil, like sure that person was not innocent, but at the time Light did not know that. It's pretty clear from the start that Light is an egomaniac with a god complex, excusing the times he kills good people by saying they oppose me so they are evil. I am not denying he gets even worse mentally as time goes by, but he was already a maniac. Just remember he also killed a bunch of FBI agents whose only crime was investigating him, and that was on episode 5 lol, so no, he never had good intentions in the first place, or you can argue he had those, but just during episode 1 then those good intentions became excuses for him to do what he really wants. Satisfy his ego by becoming a god. Either listen to N. Archie or Maxie. Archie and Maxie had the right idea of fixing overpopulation but had terrible execution. While I agree with you, Archie's idea was retarded. So you're telling me to fix overpopulation you decrease the land mass. If he was doing this for the Pockman, sure. But for the people that was just a stupid move. Lady Trieu in the new Watchmen HBO series. I do believe that she had the correct intentions, but her hubris clouded her judgment. Also, her father is right that she'll make a bad god. So I don't think she was evil, but agree she would have either been pretty evil or at best became detached just like John. Don't know if anyone said this yet, but Killmonger. Like I'd be pretty upset too if my dad was killed by my uncle. And I was left alone. An orphan. An oppressed black man, all because said uncle refused to take me back in order to protect their way of life. Double quote. Not to mention the Wakandans stood back while people that looked like us, aka African Americans, were put on ships and made slaves. They watched as we went through all these trials and tribulations, letting us suffer all just to protect their way of life. Yeah. I'd be pretty pissed too. Might even challenge for the throne and do something about it. I just saw Pirates of the Caribbean. Dead Men Tell No Tales, and Salazar was a good guy who got cursed after trying to defeat those dastardly pirates. Jack Sparrow is just a lucky self-centered drunk who deserves a good ass kicking.